Justin Marks says that Project 91 could be returning sooner rather than later, and Chandler Smith's future in NASCAR continues to remain uncertain for 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2025 DeWalt scheme that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. I think this should have a black number. That's one thing I will say about this paint scheme. I do like a lot of things about it, but one thing that kind of drops the scheme a little bit for me is it not having a black number, because one thing about DeWalt schemes is a black number is iconic. I think it's a little bit disappointing on that front, but it does look decent overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Byron's 2025 HP scheme that we'll see at Phoenix and Gateway. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I do like the colors of it. I do like the black number. I do like the blue. I think it's decent. Hopefully we can have a good run in this scheme in a couple of events. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece and Brad Keselowski's 2025 Castrol schemes that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. These schemes look amazing. I love the red, I like the green, I love the contrast. They look really, really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack in 2025. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Buescher's 2025 TA Travel scheme that we'll see at Talladega in the spring. I like the scheme a lot. I like the colors on it. I think RFK nailed this one. I think this one looks really solid. I think did a really, really awesome and pretty dang good job on it. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Talladega later this year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Get Bioethanol. As it was reported by Joseph Straley yesterday, that Get Bioethanol will no longer be required on the car starting in 2025. Get Bioethanol has been required on the car, I believe, since 2011 or 2012, so this has been going on for a very, very long time. NASCAR has been trying to basically cost the teams money, basically, in a sense, and trying to save the teams money in a way. Kind of similar situation with the fire suits and the pit crew members in the truck series as well. I think you're still going to see some teams that are going to have an honor and during pit practice especially and during the races. I get they're trying to save teams money, but at the same token, same time, you can't just continue cutting. You're going to have to spend at some point. That being said, this isn't a bad change in my opinion. At least it's not like the fire crew or pit crew situation with the fire suits and all that stuff. To me, this isn't as bad as that, but I still think they can't keep making changes left, right, and center to try to save teams money, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chinese Grand Prix. As it was announced this morning that the Chinese Grand Prix has been expanded at the Shanghai International Circuit through 2030, and the China Grand Prix will stick around through the 2030 season. There have been talks about it being extended. I think his contract was through 2025 or 2026 originally, and now they've got a contract to 2030. I did watch the Shanghai race, and I gotta say the race was extremely boring. I think the track is decent. I think it could put on a good show in a different series. I just don't think the racing was that great at the China Grand Prix, in my opinion. I hope the racing can get better. Obviously, we've got the new regulations coming in Formula 1 in 2030, which I think will help the series in a pretty big way going forward, especially because I think the racing has been one thing that Formula 1 has been struggling in recent years. Hopefully, things can get better for Formula 1 going forward. It's interesting, though, they decided to go ahead and bring this series track back for the foreseeable future, especially through the 2030 year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Graham Loudon. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Graham Loudon has been named the team principal for Cadillac in 2026. Graham Loudon, for those who don't know, I believe he worked with the Marussia organization back in the mid-2010s when that organization was around back then. Graham Loudon also, I believe, has been working with Lewis Hamilton very closely in recent years and recent seasons as well. Graham is a veteran of the sport, and we've been seeing Andretti picking up a lot of veterans to bring into their organization to get things going for 2026. Obviously, they want to be setting up the ground running, and they want to be in a really good position. I think Graham's a decent team principal to bring in. I think he's going to do a solid job as the leader of the team. I'd have to think Dan Towers convinced him with some pretty big money as well to really bring him into the program. I really hope this can lead to a lot of success for the team in 2026. I think there's definitely going to be some struggles in year number one, but I think they're definitely taking it extremely seriously seriously, and I think it's a fantastic move to bring someone who has a veteran experience of Graham Lottin into the organization. We'll see if it can lead to a lot of success for the team in 2026, and we'll see how the Cadillac team ends up going. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Doug Duchardt and Jill Gregory. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Doug Duchardt and Jill Gregory are officially moving away from Spire Motorsports and their organizations and will be moving to TWG Global and Andretti effective immediately. Doug Duchardt has been working with Spire Motorsports for the last couple of years, had been one, I believe, a NASCAR executive or team president for Chip Ganassi Racing a few years ago when Chip Ganassi Racing was still around. And now you've got these two individuals who are two really influential and key figures who are getting involved with the Andretti in TWG Global. Obviously, TWG Global is owned by Dan Towers, which I think there's a good chance that Spire could be changing the name down the road, especially with TWG getting involved very closely. When you've got the former Spire president coming in and working with TWG, that tells me everything you need to know about the future of Spire Motorsports. This is a massive hiring for TWG. They're bringing a lot of big names in there, especially to help Andretti. This is a really, really huge deal for them, and I'm really glad to see they're bringing someone who has a lot of experience on the NASCAR side of things and has a lot of experience, especially on the business side of things, for both these individuals. I think this is a massive and huge hiring for them, and congratulations both getting a well-deserved promotion to move on to a different series. It's really exciting for them. Great stuff for sure, and glad to see that both will get the really great chance and a strong opportunity to work with both of the brandings for 2025. Really exciting and awesome stuff. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dan Stillman. As it was confirmed yesterday on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio that Dan Stillman will be the crew chief for Chris Wright in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. I don't know how much experience Dan Stillman does have in NASCAR Xfinity Series competition as a crew chief, but Dan Stillman is an interesting name to work with Chris Wright. Obviously, Chris Wright, who will be 30 years old and 31 years old next year, will move back full-time to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. If I can be real and honest here, I'm not expecting much from Chris Wright in 2025. Chris Wright, in my opinion, is a way worse driver than Anthony Alfredo. Apparently he had Formula 2 and Formula 3 contracts, which is kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it. But I think that Dan Stillman coming in and working with Chris Wright is certainly interesting. Again, I think this is a decent hiring for sure. I really hope Dan can do a good job and help Chris Wright rein him in because I'm worried there's going to be a lot of destroyed equipment throughout the 2024 season or 2025 season. We'll see what ends up going through and we'll see how much success that they can have, and we'll see if Dan Stillman and Chris Wright can work together very well throughout the 2025 year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Magnussen. As it was announced yesterday morning that Kevin Magnussen will be joining BMW in the World Endurance Championship in 2025. It is also confirmed that Kevin Magnussen is also expected to run for BMW in the Rolls 24 in 2025 as well. There have been rumors and speculation that Kevin Magnussen, we already knew, was not going to be part of Formula 1 for 2025. There was already talk and speculation that he was going to be joining up and driving for a team in the World Endurance Championship. Some thought maybe the Cadillac brand, but now we know he'll be working with BMW in 2025. Kevin Magnussen's kind of like his father. I think his father did race in Formula 1 back in the day, wasn't very successful, and then came, of course, over to IMSA and became one of the most successful drivers in IMSA, especially in the Corvette brand. I think that Kevin Magnussen is going to be very solid. I remember watching him the Rolls 24, I think 2 years ago with Cadillac, and was so impressive on the racetrack. And I think that Kevin Magnussen does have a massive amount of talent. Despite the fact he's struggled in Formula 1 in recent years, I do think he does have a lot of talent to bring to the table. So I think he's going to do a very excellent job. I think he's definitely going to bring a lot to the table for the teams, and I'm excited to see what he can do with BMW in 2025. I think he's got a really great chance and a strong opportunity to be super, super competitive, and we'll see what Kevin Magnussen can do with the BMW group starting in the 2025 season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andy Lally. As it was announced a couple days ago that Andy Lally will officially be retiring after the Rolls 24 in 2025, and I believe will become the new president of the Trans Am Series. Andy Lally is one of the greatest sports car racers we have ever seen. He has won many events in the Rolex 24. He has won championships in IMSA competition. Has been a veteran of IMSA competition for over 20 years at this point. And has a lot of success, and I think he is going to bring a lot to the table for the Trans Am Series. Congratulations, Andy, on an amazing and incredible career in motorsports. He did go off and race in NASCAR for a couple years, did have some decent success in some of the lower ranked series, but never really got his major footing, as he also kind of struggled a little bit as well, though he was a pretty solid and pretty good road course racer. And I think Andy Lally, working with the Trans Am Series, I think that is absolutely huge. I think bringing someone in who has a lot of veteran experience, who can officiate things, knows how to race right, knows what's right, knows what's wrong on a racetrack, he's going to bring a lot to the table for the Trans Am Series in the 2025 year, and I think he's going to be massive for the series. I think he will be working with them. I don't think he will be working with them for the first event, but once we do get to the second events, I think that he'll be able to bring a lot of his expertise to the table, and I think he'll be able to help the Trans Am Series in a pretty massive and major way. So this is a really exciting news. It's disappointing here that he's officially retiring, but I think it's also same time, really exciting to hear that he'll be working with the Trans Am Series. I think he's going to bring a lot of expertise to the table for this series, especially in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Logan Sargent. As it was announced on Wednesday morning that Logan Sargent will be joining the European Le Mans Series in 2025. Logan Sargent's been talking to multiple different series about racing. He had been talking about going to IndyCar for the 2025 year. He had been rumored as one of the drivers for the Prema organization, but when that did not happen, and the fact that he's not going to be joining Meyer-Shank Racing on a full basis, though he could down the road go to Meyer-Shank Racing, this is basically the only other option he had. There were talks of him maybe going to IMSA for 2025, but obviously that did not end up happening. So he'll be joining the European Le Mans Series for the 2025 season. I think Logan Sargent transitioning to the series is going to be very interesting to see what he can do. Let's be real and honest. Logan Sargent was not an amazing driver in Formula 1. I feel like that he wasn't fully ready to join Formula 1, but it was really huge to have an American driver on the grid, in my opinion. But I really do not expect him to set the world on fire, and didn't really expect him to set the world on fire in Formula 1. Now he's going to have a chance and opportunity to prove himself in another series. Can he come in and have that success that we're looking for? Can Logan Sargent step up to the plate and have a fantastic season? That will be very, very crucial for him to having a lot of success in the European Le Mans Series. I think a lot of us do want to see him succeed. I think it'd be really good for the sport, especially for motorsports as a whole, to have Logan be able to succeed after not being as successful in Formula 1. It'd be really good to see him succeed in ELMS. Maybe this could lead to him racing in the World Endurance Championship, and maybe down the road it could lead him going to IMSA down the road, which I have to think maybe not in the not-so-distant future. Logan Sargent could end up in the not back Formula 1, but maybe into the world of IMSA or IndyCar perhaps. We'll see what happens down the road, but I'm glad to see for sure that we'll get to see him race in IndyCar not IndyCar, but in the ELMS in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jamie Chadwick. As it was confirmed yesterday that Jamie Chadwick will not be racing in IndyCar in 2025. It sounds like our opportunity to go to IndyCar has unfortunately kind of closed. Jamie Chadwick, of course, competed full-time for Andretti in the Indy NXT series, and let's be real, did have some pretty decent success and picked up her first win at Road America earlier this season. There were talks and conversations about her potentially going to Juncos Hollinger Racing in 2025, because there was talk that I believe that multiple people from the Andretti group were talking with the other organization, Juncos Hollinger Racing, but things have changed really quickly with Stingray Robb going over there full-time for the 2025 campaign. Jamie Chadwick, I believe, is expected to go to the ELMS series for the 2025 year. It's unclear if she will ever come back to IndyCar in the near future. She may not even come back in 2026, especially with the charter rule that will be coming into IndyCar for the 2026-25 season, with a limit of teams that are going to be able to have only 3 full-time teams that can have charters, and you have to, of course, buy the charters if you want your team to expand. There's the limits on that front. I really hope for Jamie's sake that she can in the future come back to the IndyCar world, because I think she is a very talented race car driver who has a ton of potential. But at the same time, I think she is going to be able to provide a lot of expertise for the ELMS in 2025. We'll see how she ends up doing, we'll see how she ends up performing, and we'll see if she can do a fantastic job in the European Le Mans Series in the 2025 calendar year. We'll see how she ends up doing in 2025 in that series. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dreyer Reinbold Racing. As it was announced yesterday that Dreyer Reinbold Racing will once again be returning to run the Indy 500 in 2025, and they have announced their 2 drivers for the Indianapolis 500. The first driver will be Ryan Hunter-Reay, who will drive the number 23 car. Their second driver is not going to be Stephen Wilson. It's shockingly going to be Jack Harvey, who will be behind the wheel of the number 24 car in 2025. Let's first begin with Ryan Hunter-Reay. This is a no-brainer. Ryan Hunter-Reay is one of the best drivers in Indy 500 history. He, of course, is an Indy 500 winner back in 2014 and was pretty somewhat competitive in the event in 2024 and in prior seasons as well with Dreyer Reinbold Racing. And we've been wondering what Ryan's been up to in recent years. I think this is a really good opportunity for Ryan. I think he's got a fantastic chance and opportunity to go out and win the Indy 500 in 2025 if they could bring the pace and speed. As for Jack Harvey, that's a very interesting move. Obviously, Jack no longer with a lot of organizations at the moment right now. It's unknown what Jack Harvey's future is past the Indy 500 at this point, but this is a really decent opportunity. We do know this team is going to be very competitive. Don Cusick brings a lot of money to the table, and I think he's going to provide a lot to this program for 2025, that being Don Cusick. I really wish Stephen Wilson was getting the chance and opportunity to get behind the wheel. I guess funding is coming to play in this situation, and Jack is bringing a lot of funding from what I've heard, so that's a big reason why he's getting the seat for the Indy 500 at this time. Again, I'm not sure how it's going to end up working for them. I do think both have a really good chance and opportunity to compete for the overall win and overall victory. Believe me, I really hope that we can see both drivers succeed and run extremely well. It'd be good for both to have a lot of success because I think the more competition, the more good people you can have in the sport, the better it can be. So we'll see what ends up happening. We'll see how they end up performing, and we'll see if both can do a really solid and really great job in the 2025 Indianapolis 500. I think both are definitely going to be competitive for sure in 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Toyota. As it was shockingly announced on Wednesday afternoon, we did a video on this covering this story, but it was confirmed shockingly that Toyota will be leaving the NHRA following the 2025 season. Toyota has been part of the NHRA since 2002. They got their first win in the Winter Nationals in 2004, and they have housed many massive and major names like Ron Camps, like Robert Kalita, like people, of course, like Antron Brown, who I believe won a championship not too long ago. They've had a lot of massive and major names in the Toyota brand, and Toyota has put millions and millions and millions of dollars into the NHRA. And the fact they're losing that support from Toyota, that being the NHRA, losing a big company like Toyota, is a massive, massive loss for the brand as a whole. And when you lose a company like this is a really, really big tragic moment for the series. Now, Toyota did say they are going to help with the transition for 2026. They'll be helping get everybody to find their places. But what manufacturer are they going to go to? Maybe Dodge? Then Dodge becomes basically the whole thing because Dodge obviously has a big presence with Tony Stewart Racing. Do so many teams just not come back in 2026? That is definitely a pretty big question that is going to have to be answered down the road. This is, though, a massive loss, no doubt, for the NHRA. To lose a big company like Toyota after 2025, though they will be back for 2025, which is good, but to lose Toyota is a massive loss for the series and a pretty major and really disappointing thing to see that Toyota will be leaving the NHRA, unfortunately. Just really disappointing news to hear and sad to see they'll be leaving the NHRA following the 2025 year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR on Prime. As if you were watching the football game between the Packers and the Lions on Amazon, you probably saw basically the trailer for NASCAR on Prime. I believe this is the first time they have released a trailer around their broadcast for 2025, trying to get people who are watching NFL who might not be NASCAR fans to come out and tune into the NASCAR event. Prime, of course, will be joining NASCAR for the 2025 year, starting with the Coca-Cola 600. Then they'll race at Nashville. Then they'll race at Mexico City. I then believe they're going to race at 2 other events that are on that schedule that are going to be really fun events as well. And all of them, some of them are going to be primetime. Nashville is going to be a primetime event. Obviously, the Coke 600 is going to be a primetime event. It's a really big deal for the Coke 600 to be scheduled on Prime. It's going to be the first time the Fox has not covered it since 2000, when I believe believe was covered either, I believe, on TBS or TNN back in 2000. And I think that Prime is putting all the work in. They're doing the promotion. They're taking things extremely seriously. And that is the most important thing for Prime, is they need to be taking themselves extremely seriously. With Dale Jr. getting involved in trying to help grow the sport as a whole for NASCAR and being involved with Prime, I think he's going to be able to do that. I think this that Dale Jr. being there is huge, by the way, and I think it's really awesome to see that they're working to grow the sport, working to do what they need to do, and I'm very excited about this with Prime. I think Prime coming into the sport is huge. I think it's really awesome for sure, and it's amazing and great to see that Prime coming in. I love the trailer. It looked awesome, and it looked really great, and I'm looking forward to see Prime's partnership begin for the 2025 year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. As it was announced Thursday afternoon that Kaulig Racing has announced their crew chief and technical director lineup for 2025. So Andrew Dickinson, who had been the crew chief for the number 13 and 16 car throughout 2024, will be the crew chief for Ty Dillon in 2025. Of course, will drive the number 10 car for Kaulig Racing. Meanwhile, Trent Owens, who had been the crew chief for the number 31 car Kaulig Racing for Daniel Hemrick in 2024, will be the crew chief for AJ Allmendinger in 2025. It was also confirmed that former Stewart-Haas Racing technical director Mike Cook will be technical director for Kaulig Racing in 2025. Let's begin with Andrew Dickinson. This move makes some sense in my opinion. Andrew Dickinson had been working at RCR. He was, I believe, the engineer for Tyler Reddick in 2022. Worked on the engines and all that stuff for the team. So this move definitely makes a lot of sense. So I'm a little surprised to see that Andrew and AJ are not going to be working together for 2025. Trent Owens had been the crew chief last year for Daniel Hemrick's been a crew chief in the Cup Series for many, many years. Has worked with Kaulig Racing for the last few years. And I think working with AJ is a no-brainer move. You're putting probably your best crew chief with your best driver on the team. I think this pair actually will gel exceptionally and really well together. And then, of course, bringing Mike Cook in. Mike Cook from Stewart-Haas Racing. Because remember, Kaulig and RCR have a much bigger technical alliance for 2025. So RCR got the Stewart-Haas Racing fire sale. Richard Boswell's crew chief for Austin Dillon. They bring in, I believe, Johnny Klosmeyer as a vehicle performance director. And they're bringing a lot of massive and really, really big names into the program for 2025. To me, this is a really, really huge to see. I do like the hirings that they're having, especially for the team, and I think it's huge that you've got Mike Cook coming in to work as a tech director, and you've got all these big names getting involved with Kaulig Racing. I think their crew chief lineup is very solid for 2025. Hopefully, with some of the things they've kind of, and the gaps they've kind of filled over at Kaulig, this could lead to the team having a lot of success. I think their lineup is definitely solid for the 2025 year. Hopefully, it can lead to a lot of success for the upcoming season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. As there was reported by jski.com, I believe yesterday, that Steve Phelps apparently during his seminar with Racer.com as they were doing the Race Industry Week, he said there could be some opportunities for changes to the Xfinity Series and Truck Series platform down the road if the manufacturers do want to support it and the drivers do support it as well. Now, beginning with the Truck Series, I definitely think there's some things you could definitely change. I do think the racing in the Truck Series did definitely improve a little bit in 2024. Then again, there were also times where the Truck Series is definitely down, so whatever changes they want to make that, I will be definitely a little bit in support of that. As for the Xfinity Series, I really don't want the platform to be changed. The Xfinity Series puts on the best racing of all three series, in my opinion. Yes, the Cup Series has shown a lot of improvement with the next-gen car. The racing at short tracks has gotten better with the next-gen car. But I do believe that the Xfinity Series puts on overall the best product. At short tracks, at road courses, it doesn't matter. Prime example between Kyle Larson and Shane Van Gisbergen. That battle for the win was incredible at Chicago Street Course. And you don't get that with the Cup cars, really. Yes, you can put on decent shows at road courses, but you don't put on the great shows that you're really looking forward to. So I really hope whatever changes they make doesn't affect the racing in a big way, because I think the Xfinity Series especially puts on a really amazing and killer product. And to potentially make changes to that series for cost savings and all that kind of stuff would definitely be really tragic and really, really disappointing. I get that there are changes that do need to be made. There's no denying that. But at the same time, I don't want changes to be made to put it at sacrificing the racing product itself. Because that's one thing. The racing product needs to be the most important thing for the series. If your racing product sucks, people are just not going to tune in. That's plain and simple. So make sure the racing product isn't affected by it, and whatever changes they do decide to make, hopefully fans can support it. But at the same token, at the same time, if they make bad changes, fans are going to be against it, and they don't want changes to be made where the racing series isn't great. I mean, Cup drivers like Chase Elliott publicly said the Xfinity car is great. Logano said it. Brad Keselowski loves the racing in Xfinity. Guys like Noah Gragson, we're going to talk about here very soon. I think that the Xfinity Series cars are going to put on overall the best product in NASCAR, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson versus William Sawash. Now, there was practice yesterday for the Snowball Derby that got kind of called a little bit early because of weather that's been affecting the area over the last day or so. But we had some tempers flaring during practice for the Snowball Derby. It was between Noah Gragson and William Sawash. Now, I actually saw the replay of it. William Sawash was on a mock qualifying run, while Noah Gragson was on much older tires. Going into turn number 1, William Sawash would just, for whatever reason, shove Noah Gragson way up the racetrack and almost end up wrecking Noah Gragson. And Noah Gragson was not very happy with William about this. He actually went to confront William about this situation. Then he was interviewed by Matthew Dillner, and Matthew basically got a lot out of Noah Gragson there, where Noah basically called William Sawash a Dippin' Dot and basically said that he doesn't know anything and he doesn't know any better for the mistake he made. Then William basically tried to put out a video on social media, I believe last night, showing that yes, he was on a mock qualifying run and he still ended up moving him. Now, it's kind of crazy that we're already having beef throughout practice, right? William Sawash is one of those drivers that's touted out to be the next big thing in motorsports. And I think I've said this in the past. I think William is a talented race car driver, but he's not on the same level as a guy like Connor Zilic, who I truly do believe, or Christian Eckes or Corey Heim, who I think could go out there and maybe win a Cup Series championship down the road. I don't see that for William at this time, though I do think William has a lot of talent. But you don't want to be pissing off a lot of drivers there, especially sending someone in practice. You're in a practice session. If this was during the race, it's like, okay, it happened during the race. But this is during practice, for crying out loud, man. You should know better. I get he's only 18 years old, but this kind of stuff just shouldn't be happening. You know better than this. You're a young driver. You're racing in a series. You shouldn't be doing this, especially during practice. It's practice, for crying out loud. Use your brain a little bit, William. You're a young driver. You're going to have a lot of people that are watching this event, and I think that you're getting called out by Noah Gragson, who, yes, and really one of the big reasons Williams even in that seat next year to begin with is because of the funding that he brings. Yes, he dominated ARCA. There's no denying that. But when you're getting involved in controversies with drivers in the Cup Series and you're pissing off drivers in Cup, it really just shows that you got to learn from your mistakes. And I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be able to learn from those mistakes. And I think he's got a lot of growing up to do as a young driver, which I think the maturity is going to come in. I think generally William is kind of a mature race car driver. But when you're going out and pissing off a driver like Noah Gragson, I think that definitely says a lot in my opinion. I think it says that you don't want to make someone mad, especially earlier in the week. We've still got multiple days. We've got, I believe, practice coming up later today for the event. I just really hope that he can clean up his act going forward and stop getting into drivers and causing controversy and causing contacts. If you cause controversy and contact and you piss somebody off, they're not going to be happy with you and they might try to repay you down the road. It's wild to see, though. We've got controversy already on Thursday and we still got multiple days, and I guarantee this won't be the last time we're talking about controversy from the Snowball Derby throughout the entire weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Anderson Racing. Now, Jordan Anderson was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio yesterday and revealed some very interesting information in regards to their 2025 plans. One, he did confirm he'll be behind the wheel of the number 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing at Daytona. So we know Jordan Anderson Racing is going to run 3 cars for sure at Daytona. First big question is, who will be also behind the wheel of that number 32 car throughout 2025? I'd have to think that Austin Green, who made select starts for Jordan Anderson Racing in 2024, could very likely be the driver behind the wheel of that seat at the road course races. Austin Green was very impressive. Showed a lot of potential, was very, very competitive at a lot of road course events. I think he finished no worse than 11 in the 5 or 6 road course events that he ran. He wasn't as great on the ovals, but on road courses, he was extremely impressive. So I'd have to think he'll be the driver behind the wheel of the road course car if he's not full-time with the team. But Jordan also continued on by saying that he has a contract signed for 2025 for the drivers of the 27 and the 31 car for the 2025 year, but did not confirm who is behind the wheel. So who could be some prime candidates for this team next year? Well, we already know that Parker Retzlaff will not be back with this team for 2025, and from what I have heard, it sounds like Jeb Burton also may not be back with this program for 2025. So what candidates are out there opportunities? Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith, we're going to talk about here in a little bit, doesn't have anything signed for 2025. I think Chandler Smith will be a really solid option to go with. He has a lot of talent. I think he'd be a driver that could really build your program up, and I think he'd do a really awesome and great job. I don't know if it's going to be him, though. For what I have heard and what people are saying, too, the two names that have continued to be brought up as the major candidates are Blaine Perkins and Anthony Alfredo. It sounds like Blaine Perkins might go to the 27, and Anthony Alfredo may go to the 31 car in 2025. Anthony's a very solid driver. He's bringing some funding to the table, and I think he's kind of a lateral move from Parker Retzlaff. I think both of them are on the same talent level, which I think both are extremely talented race car drivers, and I think putting him in the main car makes a lot of sense. If Anthony does go to the 31 car, I genuinely do believe he has a really great chance and a strong opportunity to make it to the playoffs in the 2025 year. I think that Anthony's a very good driver. I think he's one of the front runners there. As for Blaine Perkins, I'm going to be real and honest. I'm not expecting much from Blaine Perkins. Blaine, I think, is an okay driver at best, but he was one of the worst drivers in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. After Hailie Deegan left the series, he became the worst driver in full season points. And I think he'll do worse than what Jeb Burton did, and Jeb Burton did solid, though, in 2024. I think Blaine will probably be around a 20th to 25th place driver in points, especially with the Xfinity Series becoming so competitive next year with guys like Carson Quaffle, Connor Zillage, Christian Eck is coming in, Taylor Gray coming in next year. You've got other drivers like Nick Sanchez and Daniel Dye moving up. You've got a lot of drivers that are coming in, and I really don't feel like the Blaine Perkins is going to do a great job with this team in 2025 if he truly ends up going there. To me, though, it's going to be very interesting to see what their lineup officially is for the 2025 year, but I do believe that Jordan Anderson Racing, regardless of who they end up getting, it could end up being controversial in a way, in a sense, but I also do think that whoever they get, some of them are going to bring funding and sponsorship to the table. Anthony does bring funding, and Blaine does bring funding as well, which is one of the big reasons why they're both expected to be the front runners for these seats for the 2025 year. That's what we're expecting currently at the moment. I think that Blaine Perkins and Anthony Alfredo will be the drivers for this team in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kings Hawaiian. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday afternoon that Kings Hawaiian is expected to leave RFK Racing after 2024 and is talking with other teams in NASCAR about a switch for 2025. As according to Adam Stern, there's apparently a conflict of interest in one of the big brands that's going to be part of the team for 2025. That big brand is Kroger. I don't believe the Kings Hawaiian has any association with Kroger, who of course will be joining RFK Racing for 2025. This doesn't really surprise me, especially with Kroger coming in and sponsoring RFK Racing for a lot of events next year, though we don't know exactly which of those brands will work with the drivers. We do know they're expected to come in. We already know it's confirmed that they're coming in, especially that's one of the reasons why we're getting a third charter for Ryan Preece to be in that third car full-time for 2025. Now, the big question is, which is going to be disappointing to see Kings Hawaiian leave, because Kings Hawaiian, I believe, has been with RFK Racing since Brad joined the team in 2022. So this is definitely a pretty big loss for the program, but it's also not surprising with Kroger coming in and kind of benefiting from that area. Now, the big question is, what teams could Kings Hawaiian go to in 2025? I think there's definitely a few possibilities out there. One of those is Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse Racing has been picking up a lot of big major brands and sponsorships in recent years. Obviously, Busch Beer and Busch Light are still expected to stick around for the 2025 year, so obviously that won't be changing for next year. But Kings Hawaiian coming in and working with Trackhouse would make a lot of sense. Maybe work with a driver like Shane Van Gisbergen, maybe work with Connor Zillage for Junior Motorsports. That could certainly be a possibility. Another team could be Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs Racing will be losing FedEx. They're no longer going to have FedEx for the 2025 year. Kings Hawaiian working with Denny Hamlin. That would be a pretty big hiring, in my opinion. I know Denny's got some other sponsors working with them, but what about them working with Chase Briscoe as well? That could certainly be a possibility. What about Hendrick Motorsports? I don't know if that'd be a possibility, but Hendrick, I think, has got some sponsorship maybe open for next year, so maybe that could be a possibility. Maybe RCR of Kyle Busch. That could be a potential possibility. But I think Kings Hawaiian leaving RFK is certainly a pretty massive and really big surprise. But at the same time, when you're picking up the Kroger sponsorship for 2025. It's also not the biggest surprise in my opinion. I think it is a pretty massive hiring for them to wherever they go. They're going to bring a lot of funding to the table, and I think whoever they sponsor, like a Kyle Larson or whoever they end up sponsoring, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace or something like that, I don't think they're going to go to 2011 and sponsor Tyler Reddick or Bubba Wallace at this point, Carlos Scribble if they come back. But I think that Kings Hawaiian coming in is definitely really, to whatever team they go to, is going to be huge. But at the same token, same time, it is a pretty massive loss for RFK if they truly have unfortunately lost them. But at the same token, same time, with the funding that they do bring to other organization, it won't be the most shocking or surprising thing in that front. In my honest opinion, though, it's a pretty massive loss to lose the Kings Hawaiian with your organization for 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brendan Butterbean Queen. As it was confirmed 2 days ago that Brendan Butterbean Queen will officially be joining Pinnacle Racing Group full-time in ARCA in 2025, driving a number 28 car. He has been rumored as the frontrunner for this team for the 2025 season, and now it's been officially confirmed that he'll be the driver for this team in 2025. Brendan Butterbean Queen made select starts in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2024 and had a really impressive debut at North Wilkesboro, and also made some other select starts with Tricon Garage. And many people in the late model world especially regard Brendan as one of the best young talents out there, and I completely agree. You look at Brendan's record and resume. Brendan has been a winner of events at North Wilkesboro, has won the multiple Cars Late Model Tour events, and nearly won the championship, I believe, this prior season in 2024. And Brendan is a guy that's been always up front, competing for wins and victories in whatever he gets into. Pinnacle Racing Group is one of the front-running organizations in ARCA. Last year, they won multiple events with Connor Mosack, and also picked up a ton of wins with Connor Zillage as well. And they also had drivers like Corey Day and Carson Quaffle getting behind the wheel of this program in 2024. And I really do believe that Pinnacle, this team bringing in a guy like Brendan, who is a very talented driver, this is a great opportunity for him. And what I love about this pickup as well for this team is you're getting a driver who deserves this opportunity to be part of this program. One of the biggest issues that ARCA and other series have had is a lot of these teams have not been able to pick up the most talented race car drivers. I believe that Brendan Butterbean Queen is one of the most talented drivers that didn't have a ride, and I think this is a really good opportunity for him. Now, if we don't see any big names go to some of these teams, if Joe Gibbs Racing doesn't bring a full-time guy in, or have like someone full-time down there, or let's say that a team like Venturiti can't get a full-time driver that's great, I think that Brendan's favored to win the championship without question right now. I think he is, because I don't know what the plans are for that Joe Gibbs Racing team, and Venturini hasn't announced anything. I do know that Isabel Robusto could be full-time with this program for 2025, but it's unknown at this point what's going to be happening there. But I think it's a great opportunity for Brendan. Now, the other big thing that I could see for Brendan next year is I do think there is a chance and opportunity for him to maybe potentially be going to trucks and running some select races. There's been a rumor going around that he could drive for Spire part-time, and there could also be some Xfinity Series starts down the road, maybe with Junior Motorsports. That could be a major possibility for that. But I think this is an amazing opportunity for Brendan. I think he's getting a rightful and justified opportunity with Pinnacle, and I really think he is going to do a really excellent and fantastic job with this team in the 2025 year. I'm excited to see what he can do in 2025 with Pinnacle. I think he's going to win a lot of races. I think he's going to destroy the field especially, and I'm excited to see what he can do in 2025 with Pinnacle. I'm excited to see this, and we'll see how he ends up doing with the Pinnacle Racing Group in the 2025 calendar year. Excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As it was confirmed 2 nights ago, that Kyle Larson will officially be running the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals. Kyle Larson is a multi-time winner of the Chili Bowl Nationals, of course a 2-time winner, I believe, back in 2020, and of course in 2021, before not competing in 2022, I believe, or in 2023. He basically did compete in last year's Chili Bowl Nationals as a last-minute entry in the number 98 car for Keith Kunz Motorsports, and unfortunately did not end up having a fantastic run in that, ended up flipping upside down, and basically said forget about it, and basically said he'd go run in the Favado and race in that late model event. Now we know Kyle Larson is going to be running for the team of Paul Silva Racing, which is one of the fastest organizations in the sport of basically dirt racing. And Kyle Larson, of course, knows how to get it done. I think you have to put Kyle Larson as the absolute favorite for sure to now win the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals. He's without question the favorite, in my opinion, going into this event, even though you have a lot of really great talents who are running this event. You're going to have Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who's going to be running as well, that he was confirmed. Chris Windham is going to be part of this event. Chris is a guy who can always make the A main. You've also got Logan Seeley, who is the defending winner of this event. You do have other drivers, I believe that Justin Gray, who are expected to run this event. Tanner Thorson has not been confirmed who will run. You've got Kyle Busch, who's running for the first time ever. Kyle, I think, is going to have a really good chance to go all the way to the A main. There was a potential that Connor Zilch was going to run this event, but he's not running the Chili Bowl. We haven't heard anything, but there is an outside chance maybe Shane Van Gisbergen could run, even though SVG will probably be racing in Australia at that point. But you've got a lot of really big names that are going to be running the Chili Bowl Nationals in 2025, and you've got Kyle Larson joining up with those teams. And that's one thing about the Chili Bowl, because the other big thing is I believe Kyle Larson also, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be running the Tulsa Shootout. So Kyle Larson is going to have a busy end of the year going into next year because he's also going to be racing in Australia in the High Limit Racing Series. So we know that Kyle Larson is going to have a very, very busy upcoming months, but getting behind the wheel of a race car is the most important thing. And when your mind is so focused on racing, you can barely be good in the NASCAR Cup Series. That's why I'm excited for Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell to get opportunities to potentially also race on dirt along with Ty Gibbs, because the more racing series, regardless of what car you are getting involved in, whether it is a wing mount sprint car or a little midget car, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Getting behind the wheel and getting rest behind a race car helps you as a race car driver and gets you to become a much better driver as a whole. I think Kyle Larson has a really fantastic chance and a very strong opportunity to go out there and win the 2025 Chili Bowl. I think he's going to be so competitive in this event. I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do, and I think Kyle Larson, absolutely without question, has maybe become the favorite, like I said, probably become the favorite to win the Chili Bowl, and I think that's one thing too, is you're going to have a lot more casual fans who are going to show up as well. Let's hope some other big names do decide to show up. Maybe Haley Deegan shows up out of nowhere. But you've got people like Jade Avedissian, of course, who I think are going to be running, and Kaylee Bryson also, she's running. So you're going to have a lot of big names running. It's going to be on Flow Racing. And I think it's exciting to see that we've got Kyle Larson officially confirmed for the Chili Bowl. I think he's going to be really competitive. I think he's going to have a great chance and opportunity to win. And I'm excited to see what Kyle Larson can officially do at the Chili Bowl. I think he's going to be very competitive, and I think he's going to have a great opportunity for sure to win the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals and get his third ever Chili Bowl victory. And now we're going to head jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Chandler Smith. Now, we've talked about this on the channel quite a few times, but Chandler Smith is one of the many big-name free agents in NASCAR currently at the moment today that still do not have a contract signed at this time for 2025, and his future continues to remain uncertain for the 2025 year. And a couple days ago, Rob Blount from Flow Sports interviewed Chandler Smith about that. He talked about how the costs have gone up massively since the 90s and 2000s, when back in the 90s and 2000s, big names like Joe Gibbs Racing and Rick Hendrick would basically hire drivers based off of talent. But now, over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, that has changed, and you have to bring a massive paycheck. He also said the same thing about the Snowball Derby and running a late model. He says that has costs, and costs have gone up massively as well. You've got to bring some sponsorship if you want to run these big late models as well. And Chandler Smith is definitely right about that. You've got to bring a massive check to the NASCAR Cup Series or the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series. And if you don't bring that big check, you're not going to get these really great opportunities. That's one of the big reasons why Chandler Smith will not be back at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. We obviously know that Taylor Gray will be driving number 54. We do know that not Ty Gibbs, even though Ty Gibbs will be the owner. We know Williams Walsh will be driving the number 18 car next year. Brandon Jones will likely drive the 20, with there being a fourth car next year. But that fourth car will be an all-star entry for drivers like Christopher Bell, maybe Eric Almirola who could come back, maybe Bubba Wallace down the road, though I don't think he's making any Xfinity starts at this time. Other drivers like Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, you name it, all these guys, and Ryan Truex too potentially, and also Martin Truex Jr., all these guys in the Joe Gibbs Racing stable who will get the chance to get behind the wheel of that program. So Chandler Smith isn't part of them unless he goes part-time. Now the big question we all kind of have is, where could Chandler Smith be going in 2025 if he doesn't end up back at Joe Gibbs Racing? Well, there aren't a lot of really big opportunities out there, right? All the really good opportunities have closed up quickly. In the NASCAR Xfinity Series, there is Jordan Anderson Racing. I did talk about that being a possibility for sure. But I think that Blaine Perkins and Anthony Alfredo are the most likely candidates for those 2 seats at the moment, who are the 2 frontrunners at this time. So I don't think that's going to be an option. What about Sam Hunt Racing? Well, Sam Hunt Racing is expected to get Dean Thompson for 2025, though that has not been confirmed. But Dean Thompson, unlike Chandler Smith, is bringing a lot of funding. All the really big rides are set. Haas Factory Team. Sheldon Creed's going to the 00. Sam Mayer going to the 41 car. Junior Motorsports, they're set for next year. Carson Quaffel's driving the 1. Sammy Smith's driving the 8 or the number 9. Justin Allgaier's driving the 7. And of course, Connor Zilch is driving a number 88 car. There is a 5th All-Star car that could be coming around, but I don't think that will be happening. Could Hendrick somehow bring a full-time car? Probably not. If it won't be a course for him. I think it will by Corey Day or Roger Crook, who gets that full-time opportunity. But we know that Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, William Byron will probably be back in that car at some point. You've obviously, of course, got RCR, and we'll talk about them. That could be an option for next year if they do run a 3rd car. They did run a 3rd car this past season for Kyle Busch on a one-off run. I think they also ran one maybe for Ty Dillon, if I can remember correctly. But I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. But there are talks that he could go to RCR. There was a rumor going around not too long ago that Chandler Smith could be part of an organization like RCR in 2025. I think Chandler Smith going to RCR part-time and Cup would certainly be interesting, unless, of course, they do get a charter release. Obviously, with the 2011 Front Row lawsuit going on currently at the moment, there has been some talks and conversations that the charters could become available to be leased out for a year, and RCR could be one of those teams, considering the fact that basically a bunch of the Stewart Haas Racing employees have gone to the RCR group. I'd have to think that SHR would probably be willing to sell that charter off to Stewart Haas Racing. But going back to Chandler Smith, I really don't know what he's doing at this point for 2025, and that's a really big shame. Chandler is one of the best young talents out there, but unfortunately, a lot of the funding that he had was brought over to Joe Gibbs Racing. And you've got to have a lot of funding if you want to run full-time in these sports. If you're not bringing a massive paycheck to a lot of these smaller teams, you're not going to get the seats, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons why Harrison Burns is going to AM Racing next year, because Harrison Burns is bringing a big pocketbook to the team. You've got to have a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship if you're going to be part of these programs. And it is a shame to see the sport has come down to this. That's one of the reasons why this lawsuit's happening, is to try to find a way to stop a lot of it basically being sponsorship. They're hoping with the lawsuit they can reveal some of the information on that and disclose and maybe get more opportunities for these smaller teams, especially to pick up really great talents. That's one thing I like to see, is drivers like Chandler Smith, who are super, super talented, get fantastic opportunities. That's why I'm worried about Corey Heim going down the road, is that Corey Heim, I think, is the best Toyota prospect we've seen in quite a bit of time, but he can't go full-time racing Cup right now because, one, 2011 picked up Riley Herbst in the 3rd car next year, because Riley Herbst is bringing a lot of funding from the Herbst brand. And I think Riley's shown a lot of improvement, but Corey Heim is overall a better driver than Riley Herbst at this moment. So to me, when I think about this, you think about Chandler Smith's future. He's one of the big name free agents, still not signed. He's up there with Zane Smith too. Zane Smith at this time, unless it's happened since I'm recording, I don't think Zane's got anything signed yet for 2025 either, and that's a really big shame too, because I think Zane Smith is a fantastic talent and a driver that, in my personal opinion, deserves a shot and opportunity to be full-time in this sport. So we'll see what happens with Chandler Smith down the road and what happens with this future, but as of right now, Chandler Smith does not have anything signed at this time for 2025, which is a great shame, because in my opinion, Chandler Smith does deserve to be full-time racing in NASCAR. Hopefully Chandler Smith can find a full-time ride and the funding for next year. But again, like I've already mentioned and said, I think his future is definitely a little bit in question for the 2025 year. Hopefully he can find a ride for 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Project 91. Now, we kind of talked a little bit about this on the channel yesterday, but it sounds like Project 91 could be potentially making a comeback in return in the not-so-distant future. According to Justin Marks, who basically was on the Racer show, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday, he revealed that Project 91 could be returning sooner rather than later. When sooner rather than later, it kind of does become a little bit vague. But when I hear sooner rather than later, that tells me, okay, there's a chance and opportunity that Project 91 could be making a comeback in some sort of capacity in 2025. Project 91, for those who do not know, who've only been around the sport in about a year or so, Project 91 is a project that Trackhouse Racing had in 2022 and also in 2023. In 2022, they gave Kimi Räikkönen a shot and opportunity at Watkins Glen. Kimi was pretty solid in that event. Unfortunately, though, for Kimi Räikkönen, he ended up crashing out due to his teammate, Ross Chastain. And then in 2023, they brought that car back for Kimi Räikkönen, and then they gave the opportunity to Shane Van Gisbergen. And Shane Van Gisbergen was super fast and super competitive and got his first career win in his first start. That led to Shane Van Gisbergen going full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series last year, and now will be going full-time Cup racing with Trackhouse Racing, of course, in 2025. And now they're bringing it back, it sounds like, for the 2025 season. And obviously, they had to put a lot of resources toward SVG in the NASCAR Xfinity Series last year, which is one of the other big reasons why they did not run this car in 2024. Now, I think there could be an opportunity to see Project 91 outside of the NASCAR realm. Obviously, there's been rumors going around that Trackhouse could be running the Rolex 24 here in the not-so-distant future, and I'd have to think that they could be running a car maybe for multiple drivers. Maybe Connor Zilisch. Connor Zilisch said he has an opportunity to run the Rolex 24. I don't think it's going to be with Aero Motorsport, so I'd have to think probably it could be with the Trackhouse run car. Same thing for Shane Van Gisbergen. I think SVG is trying to get a Rolex 24 seat set for 2025. Could this be the potential of that Project 91 entry come into the IMSA world? That could certainly be a possibility. And maybe get Kyle Larson as well, even though Kyle Larson's going to have a much and very, very busy upcoming month. So I don't think that's going to certainly be possible. But Project 91 back on the NASCAR side. I want to see this car come back in 2025. So who could be some potential candidates? Daniel Ricciardo's one I think of. Daniel Ricciardo's a driver that doesn't have anything signed yet for 2025, and he's expressed interest in going racing in NASCAR. He's expressed interest multiple times in the past, and I think many of us would absolutely love to see Daniel Ricciardo come over and race in NASCAR. I think he'd be very, very solid and really, really competitive. I think he could be, especially if you give him the right equipment, and he's expressed interest in it, and he doesn't want to go to IndyCar, so why not come over and race in NASCAR in 2025? I think that'd be really, really fun. I could see him getting a chance. What about Valentino Rossi? Valentino Rossi, the driver who's been doing some of the hypercar stuff. I think that could be a great opportunity. And then a lot of people are going to mention Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen obviously is brother-in-law with Daniel Suarez, considering Daniel Suarez is basically his wife, I think, is Julia Piquet's sister, who of course is dating Max Verstappen currently at the moment. They did indicate when they were talking to each other, basically, that Trackhouse's accounts were trying to find a way for Daniel Suarez to get Max Verstappen to run Project 91. Max already got a feud going on with George Russell at the moment, but why not bring Max over? Obviously, Kyle Larson has expressed multiple times that he is the best driver in the world, so why not have both these guys go against each other? Find a way for Trackhouse to get Max Verstappen as part of Project 91. I don't know if that's going to be possible, though, because of Ford, especially since Red Bull will be switching over to Ford, I believe, in 2025 or 2026, so I don't know if that's going to certainly be possible. But as for Project 91, the other reason why I'm excited, it's another car on the grid. I think having a car like this on the grid is really, really huge because it does attract those big names. What about a guy like Colton Herta down the road? What about Marcus Ericsson? They've expressed interest, I believe, in running Project 91. What about other drivers down the road, like Scott McLaughlin? Scott McLaughlin, I think, expressed interest in racing in NASCAR. Why not give him a chance and opportunity? I think whoever they do put behind the wheel of this seat, though, they've got to bring some type of world class. But I also think there's a chance we could see Connor Zilisch get behind the wheel of this car. Because Connor Zilisch is basically part of Trackhouse Racing, right? And we know, I would have to think they want to see what he can do behind the wheel of a Trackhouse Racing, see before, and maybe in the future, he does go full-time Cup racing. Because let's say Connor Zilisch has a really amazing year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and just completely dominates the Xfinity Series this upcoming year, I would have to think he could be a really good candidate for one of those seats next year at Trackhouse, especially with Daniel Suarez only having a one-year extension with the team. If Daniel Suarez completely struggles, Connor Zilisch is probably going to take that seat. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens, who they decide to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car down the road. But I'm glad to see this. That sounds like that Project 91 might be coming back here in the not-so-distant future. Really excited about that for sure. Hopefully it does officially make a comeback and return in the 2025 year. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Project 91 returning? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts also about Chandler Smith's future? Do you think he'll have a ride for 2025? Let me know it in the comments below. I don't think there'll be any more content dropping today unless some major news breaks. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to be talking about 10 drivers who need to step it up in 2025. I'm probably also going to have a Shane Van Gisbergen video dropping in the middle of the afternoon as well. Sunday, I'm going to have NASCAR Xfinity Series predictions for 2025. And then on Monday, if there's not enough NASCAR news to cover, I'll have basically a silly season update going through all the silly season stuff over the course of the last couple days. I've got a lot of great content dropped for you guys that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.